weigh in on the challenges of U.S. businesses in China is CNBC contributor Michelle Carusa Cabrera. And Michelle, good morning. I guess you can say,
good morning, Becky.
Well, so much for thawing relations.
Well, I mean, President Biden's not wrong, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I think if this derails what's happened thus far, it would show that Xi Jinping is very thin-skinned. I mean, I think it finally was an improvement in relations to have Secretary of State Blinken to go there, and we expect further visits from other members of the cabinet as well. That would be an improvement. I think the big disappointment from the meeting is that there wasn't a reestablishment of military conversations and communications, which is very concerning when we're seeing incidents that are happening in, for example, the Taiwan Straits a couple of weeks ago with our two militaries ending up in this situation that was confrontational. And this was a tradition or a custom or, something that was established back during the Khrushchev and Kennedy administration during the Cuban Missile Crisis or right after, to make sure that the Kremlin and the Pentagon would always be in communication regardless of the state of tension. So that way we wouldn't have accidents. So that is a big disappointment.
From the business climate perspective, I mean, we have just seen so many prominent American CEOs who have very recently made their ways to China. Does that tell us what's really happening there, or are things worse on the ground than these high-level visits would suggest?
Well, Xi Jinping has enjoyed showing off all the high-profile business leaders who have been to China. But the fact of the matter is that the situation with the Chinese economy is not nearly as good as everyone expected and is quite bad. And he's got issues that he has to deal with. Goldman Sachs, only the most recent Wall Street bank to lower their growth expectations. The issue is that Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party have chosen to prioritize security over prosperity. And I'm not talking about the people's security. I'm talking about their security in power. And how does that play out? It leads to a very bad business climate. It means that they decide that how are banks going to distribute loans? It's going to go to the companies that the government wants to get the investments. And then the other way it plays out when it comes to security is when they start really attacking and arresting people from these consulting firms that are trying to provide business information back to subsidiaries, the Chinese subsidiaries back to their, companies in the United States, that increasingly this information is illegal. I mean, it's a terrible, terrible business climate. Add to that the fact that real estate, you can't get much more growth out of there. And Xi Jinping really has some struggles when it comes to the economy. It's not clear that he cares about that, though. What he cares most about is security and staying in power.
Look, I thought Jamie Dimon actually did a pretty masterful job when he was there. He was there saying, yes, we'd like to continue doing business in China, but first and foremost, I am an American patriot, and I will do whatever is best for my country. He's never going to do anything to sidestep that. I thought he was more plain-spoken than any of the other CEOs. I think all of them are trying to walk a pretty fine line, but Jamie Dimon came right out and said it. I'm a capitalist. I'm an American patriot.
Yeah, he said he's a patriot. He also said he's a capitalist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's going there because they invested so much in China because they expected much more growth than is actually playing out, because the rules changed underneath them, because they were moving towards more free markets, less regulation, less politically directed capital, more free market policies that would lead to more growth. That's all changing. And so all the investment bets that they made are questionable at this point, right? So they're there, I think, to figure out what is going on, to try to send the message that the situation isn't what they expected and doesn't necessarily lead to more growth. And after all that investment, it's got to be very, very frustrating for them to see what's happening both geopolitically, diplomatically between the U.S. and China and the concerns about Taiwan, and then not getting what they expected out of China when it comes to potential economic growth.
So as we can see here, this reporter knows exactly what's going on with China. They're talking about how the economy is really bad, and how more specifically everyone expected it to take off, but it never did. And the reason they talk about it is because of the crackdowns on the economic growth and the military tensions. And they talked about how China didn't even try to establish a de-escalation line of communication. So China's like rejecting offer from the United States that could potentially allow there to be de-escalation and not military conflicts. That just shows that China is not even interested at this time in even having communication with the United States, which is pretty incredible that they're not even interested in communicating. And that just shows that the situation is really bad and it's not going to improve. Also, as they've discussed, the Chinese economy shows zero indication of improving, and most likely will not, because the policies are not going to cause economic growth. Until they change the policies, they're not going to cause economic growth. So we'll see what happens with respect to that. But as they highlighted, it doesn't seem likely that the situation is going to improve. And we'll see what this does with the United States and Chinese tensions that have started going on for years now.